Welcome to episode 3 of Chart Breaking Sports. It's your host, Connor Hartley, and I'm here with our esteemed, consistent soccer guest, Ethan Plaza. What's up, Ethan?
How's it going?
So, Ethan, I think we'll be doing a lot of these probably on Fridays, wrapping up the action, maybe looking forward to the upcoming weekend of games, but we had a nice full slate. We had a regular weekend. The international break was over, so this past weekend, a regular weekend of soccer/football, and we had the Champions League as well. Anything stand out to you?
Well, I think the obvious answer is the Arsenal-Bayern Munich game. Arsenal continues to prove why they are just the most inconsistent team in the world. And that really showed this week. They played a great game, and they probably deserve to beat Bayern Munich, which isn't something that very many teams can say, especially this season with Bayern being their first loss in all competitions. So I'd say that definitely stood out, and we'll probably go into more detail about that match later. What do you think? What else stood out to you this week?
Well, I think that was the big one. I'm obviously pretty Chelsea-centric, so I took a watching to their games. It was interesting to see City and Sevilla play, but let's just get straight into Arsenal-Bayern, and we can talk about some other stuff later. You watched more of this game than I did. Petr Cech made a few big plays. Arsenal did their counter-attacking thing, and Bayern got shut out for the first time.
That's true. Actually, not like Petr Cech, Daniel are both well as a goalie. It's a good goalkeeper. Both goalkeepers exceptionally well. This Emmanuel Neuer, that great save on Theo Walcott, was, in my opinion, probably the highlight of the match. Best played. Neither of the goals were really anything special. Even though Emmanuel Neuer did have a little bit of a blunder when he misjudged that cross that led to the Giroud goal for Arsenal. Both goalies played great, and I was actually talking to our good friend Mark Stinson during the game.
Yeah, what did Mark have to say?
I was talking to our friend Mark Stinson about the flow of the game, and as he pointed out, which was definitely what happened, there was zero midfield back. Every time Arsenal would get the ball on the counterattack, they'd pretty much get a shot, maybe not a good shot, but they would definitely get down the attacking end of the field. And when Bayern would then turn around and come back, they would never get stopped at the midfield. They would just immediately make it all the way to goal, which ended up being a very entertaining game. The ball was never kind of in the doldrum. Within 10 yards of the center field line, as you often see. But that's just what happens when two good teams are playing. And I don't want to say it wasn't a very defensive game because there was only 2 goals scored, but at times it felt like that, which made it very entertaining to watch.
Well, that's the classic English style, right? Just get out and have a good run at them, and don't worry about passing the ball around or keeping the ball. Just go ahead and put your head down and go on the attack right away. But that is a good counter.
That's pretty much what was happening, yeah.
That's a good counter.
Arsenal, Theo Walcott's fast. They had a good speed up top, and it was working for them. They definitely had chances. I mean, the goal that they scored was on a set piece, actually. Or the first goal they scored, the second goal was just in garbage time. But that did actually come on a counterattack. But, yeah, it was definitely entertaining football, and it was a good game. I look forward to when they play again in 2 weeks. I'm sure Bayern looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, that'll be a good game. And yeah, that is how you want a good counter-attacking system to work, right? You don't want to try and possess. You just need to strike quickly while the opponent has most of their players forward. So that was a pretty big one. What did you think of Man City and Sevilla?
I watched a bit of the Man City-Sevilla game, and Man City really hasn't had that much success in Champions League this season, and I'd say that definitely continued against Sevilla. Man City was lucky to get away with 3 points. Sevilla, who hasn't had the best season so far in La Liga, they did upset Barcelona a few weeks ago, but other than that, they are in the middle of the table. And considering it was an away game, I thought Sevilla played very well. And it's just unfortunate. Sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. They weren't able to leave Manchester with a point. Really unfortunate for them. I thought they definitely deserved the point. I can't say that. I don't know if they deserved 3 points, but that Man City surely didn't deserve both 3 points that they got. But that's soccer for you, huh?
Yeah, I watched the game and it was pretty back and forth. it was another one of those games where there's not a whole lot of attempt at possession, and both teams were gunning for the victory. So I turned this game off at about the 80th minute. I figured that either way, I mean, I thought one of the teams would score, and I didn't really see a problem necessarily with either of them scoring, just because it was a very open game, and even though the teams were pretty evenly matched, the sort of style that they were playing was always going to lead to somebody coming out on top. They were leaving themselves vulnerable, and I mean, somebody did come out with a win. Do you think that speaks to the discrepancy between the EPL and the La Liga?
It might be to the EPL and La Liga, but it's hard to say, really. EPL obviously has been struggling recently in international or in European games, whether it's Europa League or Champions League, and we talked about this last time. So I think it does have a little bit to do with the discrepancy. And Manchester City, they were second place last year, and they've been one of the best teams in England over the past couple of seasons. Sevilla, they're the two-time defending Europa League champions. Granted, they haven't really finished higher than fourth in Spain in a while, but they're still a great team. They don't have the same firepower as Man City, but obviously, they showed you they can still be competitive. So yeah, I guess this game does have something to do with the discrepancy between La Liga and the EPL.
It was just interesting to see this mid-tier, I mean, on the upper side, but this mid-tier Spanish team that really was causing a lot of problems for the English champion or not, the English leader. And granted, Man City was missing a lot of important players, like Vincent Kompany was out, Aguero was out, David Silva was out, and they kind of looked lost without those guys. But still, I mean, still had Touré, Fernandinho was playing, Joe Hart was playing. A lot of the bigger names were in the game, and could barely come out with the win. That does put Man City into second place in their group, though. By the way, we were talking about Arsenal-Bayern. Arsenal's in last place in their group still.
Arsenal still is last place in their group, yes.
Just behind on the head-to-head with Dinamo Zagreb, who has a much worse goal differential.
But, I mean, it's better to be in last place with 3 points than last place with 0 points or 1 point. So Arsenal is still very much alive to qualify for the knockout round.
Yes, from the Department of Obvious Statements. Thank you, Ethan. It is better to have points than not points. You want to talk about PSG and Real Madrid?
Sure, I can talk a little bit about PSG, Real Madrid. So Real Madrid, similar to Manchester City's, definitely in the injury department. They were not starting a very strong team. No Benzema, no Luka Modric, no Bale, no James. So they still have Ronaldo, obviously, who's a above average player.
I've heard of him.
So you've heard of him. So they weren't totally lost, but the game is 0-0. PSG was playing the better game. I was watching the game with my Real Madrid fan roommate who thought Madrid was lucky to get away with a point there. Not very often that Real Madrid gets outplayed, but this was definitely an example of that. But both teams did have their chances. And so it was one of those games that could have gone either way, and it, just went 0-0. But I think next time they play, when it's in Madrid and Madrid will be healthy, that Real Madrid will come away with a win. But PSG, I don't want to say it was a missed opportunity for them, but because a game like this could be the difference between finishing first and second in the group. It was their chance to play a weakened Real Madrid team at home, and they didn't capitalize on it. Not that they played poorly, but they didn't get away with the 3 points. So who knows? Maybe Real Madrid wins in Madrid, and assuming that both Real Madrid and PSG just win the remainder of their games in their group stage, this could be the difference between PSG having an unfavorable matchup, being the second team to come out of the group, and Real Madrid having a more favorable matchup, being the group leader.
Yeah, you wonder how much teams think about that, because it seems like they don't necessarily until they get caught behind the 8 ball and you're ending up playing Barcelona in your round of 16 match. But
yeah, really.
But they did they got stuck with a pretty terrible draw, having being in the same group as each other, whereas there's Group H, where the top team right now is Zenit, followed by Valencia, with Leon and Ghent in the non-qualification spots. But, I thought this was a pretty ugly game. I watched part of it. I had a dual screen with Man City and Sevilla, and there wasn't a whole lot of excitement. It seemed like both teams were pretty satisfied to go for the draw. I mean, it didn't look like Real Madrid was ever at risk of breaking through PSG's back line, and sort of felt the same way on the other side. I thought these teams played very conservatively. The rest of their group is Malmo and Shakhtar, neither of whom have any chance. Shakhtar hasn't even won a game yet. And Malmo, obviously not a serious contender to usurp either of these teams. The only interesting thing I thought about this game was I think it's great to watch Marcelo. I think he's a fantastic watch. He's a very unique player from left back in that he's ostensibly a defender, and he's not bad when he is defending, but he's just not defending very often. He's breaking forward, and he's really getting inside the field. A lot of outside backs like to play the wing, but he's moving inside and trying to be a key playmaker. He had some very saucy footwork. What do you think of Marcelo? I mean, do you think is he a top 5 left back? What do you think of him?
Is he a top 5 left back? He might be. That's a very specific question. Just looking at left backs, I don't have a list of left backs off the top of my head. I think you said this a few days ago, that he's one of those players who could be great for your team, or he could just be horrible for your team. I mean, he had that own goal in the World Cup, which started things out for Brazil, but he's a great player. He's been a staple of the Real Madrid defense for years, and I guess you would say the top 5 left back. And yeah, he is good going forward, which is what you want in a left back or in any outside back. And he's also good defensive. He's not a total defensive liability, and he'll give you a full 90 minutes. And he's got a good hairdo too, so he's got all that going for him.
The good hairdo.
If you're a fan of the afro, which a lot of those Brazilian defenders are, him and David Luiz make a good combo back there. For the national team.
That is probably the team with the best hair in the world, is the Brazilian national team.
It might be.
I don't know. He's one of those players that he's such a luxury player, in that if you have a solid back line who can make up for his forays forward, and you could use a little creativity coming from the back, he can be an excellent player, like a game-changing player. He can win games for you. Or, on the other end, if you aren't super solid defensively and you don't have players who can track back and cover him, he can be a huge liability. He can either be the best player on the field or the worst player on the field. And I thought he was very good in this cagey game where he had a little bit of space to move up to, and because the game was being played so closely in the midfield, he didn't have that far to go back. But I mean, sometimes, like the Brazil-Germany game, he was a disaster. He's trying to push forward and help his team out and get something going offensively, but he's leaving these huge gaps on the left side of the field. He should probably never play next to David Luiz or Dante, but obviously neither of them play at Real Madrid. So, let's look at. I mean, do you have anything else to say about Champions League? We had Group B, Wolfsburg and Man U are leading the group after Man U drew with Moscow. I don't know if you saw any of that.
I saw a little bit of that game, but this was probably as per usual, English teams didn't do too hot in Champions League, with the Arsenal being their golden exception this week. Man City again scraped out a win. I feel like they've been consistently playing from behind in all their Champions League games. At least all the Champions League games they win, they've played from behind at one point. Man U continued. What are they? They tied or they won? They tied, right?
I think they tied.
They tied. Yeah, they tied.
What'd you think of the Barca game?
Oh, the Barca game was boring. Barca won. It was like it was. I have nothing to say about the Barca game. I watched the Barca game. It was a standard Barcelona game. They won. They didn't have Messi. They were playing a weaker side. If they didn't win, it would have been weird. But there was I have nothing to say about the Barcelona game.
What about the Barcelona La Liga action?
I have seen some Barcelona La Liga action. They really haven't looked that good. They did beat Rayo Vallecano last week like 5-1, but it was one of those games that they won 5-1, but it was it wasn't a strong 5-1. As weird as a statement that might sound. I mean, Neymar had 4 goals, but it was maybe like the worst 4-goal game I've ever seen. 2 of them were penalty kicks, so basically gimmies, and 2 of them were empty netters that he just kind of tapped in. So the 4-goal stat line really doesn't look as good as it was. And they just haven't been playing great. I mean, they're still one of the best teams in the world just because they have so many good players. But defensively, they haven't really been all there. Offensively, they've been getting by, but they're still they're still not 100%. Outplay them a little bit without Messi and Iniesta. But I think this Champions League game was actually their first defensive shutout in like the last 8 or 9 games. It's not what you'd expect from Barcelona, or one of the best teams in the world.
How do you think they're adapting to playing without Messi?
Well, they're not adapting very well. I mean, they still have Suarez and Neymar, who are great. But coming in to replace Messi, there's 2 players. One's Sandro, and the other one's Munir El-Hadini. And neither of them, they're pretty much the timeshare splitting between those 2, and they're still running the same 4-3-3 formation without Messi. And you can't replace Messi. So obviously, if you lose Messi, you're not going to play as well without him. I mean, I don't want to throw really the blame on Barcelona for not being able to be as dominant without Messi, because no team will be as dominant without Messi when you're missing the best player in the world. Obviously, as a team, they're going to take a few steps back, which they have, but thankfully for them, it's early enough in the season where they can still get by. They're not playing any big games. They are playing Real Madrid in almost exactly a month, on November 22nd, the first installment of El Clasico in Madrid, and Messi is a question mark for that game. So if he's not back for that game and they fail to lose, or it will be a close game. So if they don't win, then you might be able to. That would be the first time his injuries kind of really hurt the team. Because right now they're enough without him that they're not going to get too many points in the league, if any.
Are you concerned about their Champions League title defense?
Oh, yeah, of course I'm concerned about their Champions League title defense. I don't think they're going to repeat. To be honest, I didn't think they were going to win last year in the beginning of the season. Obviously, I was very wrong about that. But, I mean, defensively, they haven't been a very strong side. Like I said earlier, this was their first shutout they've had in forever. And they'll get through the group, no problem. I mean, they don't really need to be worried until they get to the quarterfinals, and by then it'll be March, and they could easily turn things around. But you never know. There's a chance that, like we were talking about earlier, they could be matched up with a team like PSG right out of the bat in the round of 16. And although I'd still favor Barcelona in that game, I mean, last year PSG upset Chelsea in the round of 16, and Chelsea is favored going into that game. So it's too early to really say Barcelona is going to have an early exit, but it's just something that Barcelona fans should be wary about. The team isn't playing top quality football, but I think most people know that, so it's not really a secret, but still, it's a reason to be a little bit concerned.
Yeah, well, I can see that. It doesn't seem like Barcelona is playing their best football, and I thought they'd adapt better than they have, honestly. I thought, Suarez is such an individual talent and such a destructive force, sucks up multiple defenders, that be able to get by without Messi, but obviously there's a little adjustment period. On my side of things, I'm also worried about a title defense, and that's not going too well for my boys in blue, Chelsea. They had a couple games this past week. They played Aston Villa. I watched that game. It was terrible. Aston Villa is the worst team I've seen all season, I think, except maybe when Manchester United was qualifying against Bruges. Bruges was pretty terrible. But, I mean, Aston Villa is basically a walkthrough. They haven't won yet this season. And, I guess they have, but just not in their last 7 games. Chelsea won 2-0. And they drew against Dynamo Kiev. Have you caught any Chelsea matches lately?
Not lately. I can't say I have. Am I missing out on anything?
You're missing out on Willian. He hit the bar against.
Oh, Willian.
And he missed just barely wide of the goal against Dynamo Kiev. Chelsea looked pretty toothless though in the attack. I think that Diego Costa is not the same player that he was a few years ago. he just looks like maybe those knee injuries have taken off some of his pace. His touch is bad. He's not particularly quick. He spends most of the game rolling around on the ground with some center back, and I don't know, it's weird. Did you see these signs coming at Atletico? Like, was he this? Because people hate him now at Chelsea, and he's a disruptor or whatever. But a lot of times it seems like it distracts from his game.
I'd say, if anything, the first time I really saw him play, kind of not too hot, was really in the World Cup. He was playing with Spain. I thought he looked really out of place. I can't say that I saw him that side of him at Atletico. Really, he's one of those guys you want to play with. You don't want to play against, just because he's one of those players who will kind of do stuff behind the ref's back and really tick off. He's really a pet peeve. Not a pet peeve. He's going to tick off the other team. And he's very aggressive, big guy up top, which he worked out very well for Atletico Madrid. Obviously, that's right, they sold him, and it's not that he had a bad season last year, but the first time I really saw that was in Spain in the World Cup. Maybe it's just, and I don't know. I'm not really a Diego Costa expert, but yeah, he really. I mean, it's hard to just say that he's having a bad season if you look at Chelsea, considering the whole team's having a bad season. But he is their striker, so he is kind of the first one people look at when the goals aren't coming. And that's for a variety of reasons, obviously.
Well, I just don't remember his touch looking so bad. Like, when I watch him for Chelsea, he's got a really loose touch.
Can't say I do recall him having a bad touch, and maybe that's just this season.
Maybe. Yeah. It's been ugly all the way around for Chelsea. Hazard's been getting dropped. He's been coming off the bench a little bit. He's not played well enough to deserve a starting spot. I hate saying that. He's my second favorite player on the team, but he's the best player on the team. He's just not playing very well. It's the Belgium Hazard instead of the Chelsea of last year Hazard. And it's just not working out. Luckily, my favorite player on Chelsea, this is probably the most interesting development, my favorite Chelsea player is getting back in the rotation, and he's killing it, of course. Can you guess who that is?
Your favorite Chelsea player?
My favorite Chelsea player.
Oh, I know it's not Alex.
Unfortunately.
I thought it was Hazard. Courtois, is he getting back in the rotation?
No, I think he's still injured.
Well, I don't know, who's your favorite Chelsea player?
Ramirez, dog. Ramirez is getting back in the squad.
Ramirez.
So excited. Back in his holding midfielder role. He's running around crazy, winning insane tackles and dribbling through fools. This guy's just a wild burst of energy. He's so much fun to watch. But let's, if there's nothing else we want to talk about from this past weekend, do you want to preview some of the games coming up?
All right, let's see. What do we have this weekend? Let's see. In La Liga.
Yeah, tell me about La Liga. I'll tell you about.
Barcelona's playing Eibar. There's really not that many crazy games this weekend. Barcelona's playing Eibar this weekend. Iniesta might be coming back. Eibar is a small side from up north. Drew us here in La Liga, and they're good enough to stay, but it should be an easy win for Barcelona. We have Real Madrid will be taking on Celta Vigo, who has actually had a fairly good year this year. They upset Barcelona 4-1 about a month ago. This is back when Messi was playing. That Celta Vigo upset Real Madrid. And this game is in Vigo, so perhaps, anything can happen, but Real Madrid's still the favorite. When Atletico Madrid will be taking Valencia, that will be a good game. And there's a chance I will be at that game, but that is beside the point, so that should be a good game. Atletico Madrid and Valencia, two Champions League teams, finished 3rd and 4th respectively last season. Jackson Martinez finally scored. It's for his first Champions League goal this season for Atletico as they beat Baston 4-0 on Wednesday.
He's killing it for my Champions League team.
He's what?
He's killing it for my fantasy team.
He's killing it for your fantasy team. There you go.
Yeah.
So hopefully he'll get back and score a La Liga goal. He's had one. It was back in August, and Atletico Madrid need their 35 million euro transfer from the summer to get moving. Because let's be real, if they want to win some trophies this year, they can't have Fernando Torres starting next to Griezmann.
Oh, Fernando Torres came off the bench for a Champions League winner, though.
Yeah, Fernando Torres, I don't mind him coming off the bench, but like you don't want Fernando Torres starting if you want to win anything.
No, he's not. He's not the Liverpool Fernando Torres anymore, and he hasn't been for a long time.
He's been better than the Chelsea Fernando Torres. He hasn't been horrible for Atletico this season.
The Chelsea Fernando Torres was one of the worst things I've ever seen.
Well, he hasn't been that bad, but he definitely hasn't been Liverpool Fernando Torres. But I mean, that just kind of shows you how bad Jackson Martinez has been. But he'll be okay. I have faith, and I think most people around here in Spain do actually think that he will get back into form soon, and he'll be okay. I have my faith in Jackson Martinez.
Are you concerned about his age at all? Because he's kind of old. I mean, he's like 27. It's pretty old to be moving to a new club.
It is, but he'll be okay. I'm not too concerned about that. Just because, I mean, a lot of it just because Atletico Madrid had so much success with strikers in the past. I mean, which I know it might not be the best indication that he'll do well, just because Diego Costa did well, and just because, well, Fernando Torres once upon a time, or Forlan, or Aguero.
Falcao.
Or Falcao, yeah, I knew I was forgetting someone else there.
There's a pretty strong Chelsea Atletico Madrid striker correlation.
Falcao, Diego Costa,
Torres. Outside the strikers.
Even though only one of them went directly there.
Yeah. Outside the strikers, Courtois. Felipe Luis.
Felipe Luis, yes, even though now he's back in Madrid.
Yeah, he got transferred back and forth.
Yeah, he's playing pretty well this year, actually. I don't know what you guys did wrong with Felipe Luis in London. But no, he's starting for Atletico Madrid. He's playing well.
Well,
they have one of the better defenses in Europe, actually.
It was just that he never played. He never got his chance, and this was before Ivanovic self-destructed, and so there was no opening on the other outside back spot.
Ivanovic. Well, anyway, that's pretty much the big La Liga action this weekend.
Oh, well, there's some good games in the
big
EPL.
Teams that's playing.
There's some good games in the EPL. You want to hear about them?
Well, sure. I think Arsenal's playing Everton. Am I right?
I think that's true. I think that West Ham is playing Chelsea. It's a big match. West Ham is pretty high up the table still. They are.
That sounds like a derby.
They're in 4th place. It's a London derby, and so far West Ham has beaten a few of the big teams away. This is a home game for them, so maybe Chelsea will be able to get the win. But I will definitely be up at 7 a.m. watching that tomorrow morning. The classic 5th versus 6th place game. No, it's not Everton Tottenham. It's Leicester City and Crystal Palace. Should be an exciting one.
Yay! That actually won't be a bad game.
And there are 2 more derbies. There's the Tyneside Derby. You know who plays in that?
The which derby?
Tyneside Derby.
Tyneside Derby.
I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't know. It's at the ripe old time. It's at 5 in the morning here on the West Coast. It's Sunderland Newcastle.
Sunderland Newcastle. Okay.
Also known as
Newcastle's been the Magpies have been struggling this year.
Yeah, it's also known as the relegation derby.
The relegation derby.
They're in 20th and 18th. And then we've also got the Manchester Derby.
The Manchester Derby.
Yeah.
Yes.
On Sunday. Care to offer a prediction?
Ooh, prediction time. I'm going. I'm feeling Man U this game. City hasn't been playing too well, but then again, United really hasn't been too hot either. But I don't know. I'm just feeling Man U. Marshall has been he's had a good start to the season, and I'm just feeling Man U. I just don't trust City right now. Like, they're injured. They really shouldn't have beat Sevilla. So I'm going with Manchester United. And you did have that huge loss to Arsenal. They haven't been very good against top teams. And I think they're going to rebound with I guess a rebound as far as their big games go. I haven't won a big game so far this season. And they're due.
I'm going the other way with this. I think this Manchester United team is way overrated. I don't think they're as good as their position in the table. I think that Mangala, the Man City center back, another Frenchman, is a great matchup for Martial because he's just as fast as Martial and he's going to be familiar with him. I think he'll be able to shut Martial down. I'm seeing Man City 2-0. I think that they'll be able to exploit that midfield. I think Toure could be looking for a big game, especially if he's allowed to play higher up as an attacking mid, get behind Schweinsteiger and Carrick. I just see this City team as being too explosive for Manchester United. And so I'm going with a City victory. Okay, well, that does it for the games. Let's talk about the Balon D'Or, and then let's wrap this up.
All right. Well, the short list, not very short list, 23 players short list for Balon D'Or.
Yeah, the list for Balon D'Or.
Basically, it's the 23 best offensive players that exist, and then Neuer also made the list. Mascherano also made the list, but other than those exceptions, it's pretty much the 23 best offensive players on the list. What stands out to you about it?
Well, I mean, it's the same thing every year, isn't it? It's all attackers, and I'd like to talk about that part of it, honestly. There's this idea that forwards are the most valuable players in the game because they score the goals, and it's hard to get the goals. You see how few there are. So the forwards are the most important players. They're the most talented ones. That's the conventional wisdom. I don't know if I agree with that. And of course, I have a little bias. I'm a defender. You're a goalkeeper. We're both going to have a little bias. But if you look at statistical analysis of the way soccer games go, keeping a clean sheet is a more effective method of getting points than scoring 3 goals is. You know, if you keep a clean sheet, you're guaranteed at least 1 point on the 3 points for a win, 1 for a draw system. And just in general, when you start getting scored on, you're more and more likely to lose points than you are to gain points by scoring goals. So statistical analysis would say that it's actually defense that's more important than offense in terms of winning games. And yet here we have a list where defenders are not recognized just about at all. And even going by the conventional wisdom, I have to say, I think that setting up goals is trickier than actually scoring them. A lot of times goals, you're talking about Neymar getting the easiest 4-goal game. You have to say the guys who set him up for the goals are making a bigger impact on that game than he is scoring them, right?
You could definitely make that case, yeah. Which is the reason I think that Lewandowski, although he's a great player, is, I don't want to say overrated, but just isn't like the second best player in the world. Just because I don't think he can sort of create his own goal. He can finish. He's one of the best finishers in the game, but to say he's one of the best players in the game, I think would be a little bit of a stretch. And the offense, the players taking the spotlight, you see it in every sport. You really, we don't need to get into the details of how the last, 50 NFL MVP quarterbacks, some exaggeration. You see it in every sport. But it's definitely been, and this list really just amplifies that. Mascherano made it as the only really defensive player, and that kind of puzzles me as to why he is the only defensive player, Neuer aside, that made the list. Probably because he did win Champions League with Chelsea. What am I saying? With Barcelona, so they're giving him some credit for that. But I'd say I could think of a couple defenders that I'd probably consider to be better than Mascherano that should be on the Boateng. I think is better than Mascherano. Ramos, Varane are both better than Mascherano in my opinion. Godin's better than Mascherano. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think that Boateng got his career ruined by Messi, and that's going to affect his perception, fairly or not, which is pretty unfair. It was one bad moment for a 6'4" guy going up against a 5'7" guy. Yeah, he's not going to have the balance advantage.
And it's Messi.
But Boateng's consistently a fantastic defender with pace and good footwork and a lot aerial dominance. Godin, I think, is probably the best defender in the world. The two the two Real Madrid defenders you mentioned are good. I worry about Sergio Ramos' discipline. Somehow he's less disciplined than teammate Pepe, which is pretty mind-boggling. But
yes, that's true.
But no, I mean, I don't. Mascherano is getting the nod because of Barcelona. Lewandowski, by the way, I read this morning, 31% goal completion conversion rate, which means 31% of his shots end up in the back of the net. Not his shots on target, 31% of all of his shots. And that's crazy.
That's a pretty remarkable number for any player. That is insane, and that just kind of goes to show how great of a season he's been having. I mean, the 5-goal game, 5 goals in 9 minutes is really the cherry on top. But that game aside, he's been playing great. He's been playing great for Poland. Big reason that they qualified for the Euros. I mean, I don't think he's going to win because I think it's going to be either Ronaldo or Messi. But I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes in 3rd place.
No, I wouldn't either. No, I probably wouldn't either. I'd like to see Hazard up there. He's had a really bad start to this season. And obviously this season has less weight than last season, but in the terms of the overall context of 2015, but I thought he was excellent in 2014-15. Kevin De Bruyne, I actually think should probably finish 3rd. He had 20 assists last year in the Bundesliga, tied a record. He scored a ton of goals as well. I mean, he is just an absolute force, and he's fun to watch because he'll play a pass that might not have a great chance of being completed. He's not great in terms of pass completion, but that's how he creates so many chances. He takes risks with his passes. So this is Messi's award really this year, right?
I mean, it's either him or Ronaldo. Honestly, I don't know who I think should get it between the two of them. Probably Messi, but you can't go wrong with either of those two. And the fact that they even bothered putting 23 players on this list, I don't really know why they do that. Considering that half of them obviously don't even hope to have a chance to win. And this list is incredibly Real Madrid and Barcelona heavy. There's only 3 players from the EPL here, actually. Aguero, Hazard, and Yaya Toure, and then you have Arturo Vidal and Pogba. Arturo Vidal only counting as half of the player, really, who played in Italy, and then in Germany you have a few players on Bayern Munich: Robin, Müller, Neuer, Lewandowski. It's kind of what you'd expect. Your best players, the best teams, but yeah, there's not really no surprises on this list, which is a little disappointing.
All right, if you had to do a top 5, who would you go? And I can go first if you don't think you're ready.
Why don't you go first? I'll give it a few seconds of thought.
Okay, so my top 5 for 2015, and remember, it's that calendar year, if I'm not mistaken.
Calendar year, I believe that is correct, but okay, let's just assume 2015 calendar year.
Okay, so I'm going number 1 is Messi. Even though he didn't win the Copa America this summer, still got the Champions League. He's scoring as proficiently as ever. He's setting up plays. He's really the exception to what I was talking about, creating a goal versus scoring a goal, because nobody does both as well as he does. I'll take Ronaldo for number 2, even though he didn't win anything this year. Still a dominant force. I'm going to put De Bruyne at number 3. I think I made my case for him already. I'd probably put Pogba at number 4. He was pretty fantastic. Obviously, France didn't have a whole lot this summer, but he was the driving force that brought Juve into winning Serie A again for the 4th straight time and brought the team to the Champions League final when I don't really think anybody expected that. Just so good in the middle. Really no weaknesses to his game. So intelligent, so powerful, fast, good with his feet, playmaker, goal scorer, defensive stalwart. He's an excellent all-around player, and he's only going to get better. And for my 5th place, this is tricky. There's about 3 guys I want to give this one to, but I think that Hazard, Suarez, and Vidal really stand above everybody else. Chile came through and won the Copa America this summer, and he made Champions League final with Juventus. Didn't play great in the final itself, but Vidal's been wonderful all season. Suarez, it's hard to really explain how much value he brings to a team because he's the guy who wins the ball, makes a great pass, scores a goal, and really it's that all-around energy, the way that he keeps the ball for his team that is pretty overlooked. And then Hazard, obviously my boy for Chelsea, won the EPL this year, was the EPL Player of the Year, scored 14 goals, led the competition in assists. It's so tough. But I'm going to have to go with Hazard for my Chelsea bias.
Yeah, it is a very tough list, and you have so many great players. But I'd have to go, my top 5 would be Messi. I'm not going to repeat you for pretty much for the same reasons. Ronaldo at number 2. Number 3, I'd have to go with Lewandowski. I don't know if that's a bit of a recency bias, but he's just been killing it. That's pretty much the best way to say it. He's just been killing it. For number 4, I think for number 4 and 5, I'm kind of torn between 4 different players who I'm not really sure in what order I'd put them, and those 4 players are Aguero, Suarez, Arturo Vidal, and Alexis Sanchez. Alexis Sanchez has been playing really, really well recently for both club and country, so I might have a bit of a recency bias with him. But him, as well as Vidal, very responsible for Chile winning the Copa America this past summer, and he has been a very, very bright spot on a occasionally weak and occasionally strong Arsenal team. And yeah, Vidal was obviously influential with Juventus making it to the Champions League final, and then with Chile winning the Copa America. Aguero has had almost as good of a season as Lewandowski. He's been scoring left and right. He's currently injured at the moment. He just recently got injured in a World Cup match against Ecuador, actually. And then Suarez, you said it. He's just a goal-scoring machine. He's an amazing goal scorer, and it's hard not to have him in the top 5. Yeah, that's my top 5 or 7.
Yeah, I think I left off Aguero because of the injuries, and that's it's been a theme throughout his career. But he only played about half of City's games last season, and didn't really blow up in the Copa America. So as talented as he is, I left him off just because he doesn't play enough.
Understandable.
I want to ask, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to a legend here, but was Ronaldo's season that great that we both just put him at number 2 right away? I mean, yeah, he's Ronaldo, but his team didn't do anything this summer. Portugal didn't have any summer action, and it's tough to hold it against somebody when they're not playing games that they're not scheduled for. But I feel like you have to give some more respect to the South American players who did have that summer competition this year, because we're looking at the full body of work. And also, I mean, his team didn't win Champions League. They didn't win Spain. Was he? I mean, it's not to say that he wasn't up to his usual world-beating standards, but it's almost, I don't know if I'm bored giving the guy recognition or if it'd be nice to recognize some other people, but in terms of achievement, it doesn't seem like he had his best season.
Well, I see your point, but like you said, all the things that we're looking at as far as trophies are all team trophies. They're not individual trophies. One player, despite what everyone seems to believe, one player cannot win an award or win any trophies for their team. Real Madrid is still one of the best teams in the world, even though they didn't win any trophies this year, which in Madrid is a catastrophe, as it is in Barcelona when they don't win any trophies. But it happens. It's not that big of a deal. He still played great, and I still do think that he deserves to be the number 2 player, despite not having anything to show for it except for goals, which is except for goals. Oh, how horrible! He recently did break the record, Raul's Real Madrid record for most goals scored at that club, even though he hasn't even been there his whole career. So is that, accolade going for him, that achievement that he's recently done. But, I mean, I've watched a decent amount of Ronaldo playing, and I think he's the second best player in the world, regardless of what trophies he did or didn't win. So, I mean, it might just be that we want to recognize other people. So I kind of see why you made that case for him to not be the number 2 player. But I'm still going with Ronaldo number 2 or even number 1.
Yeah, maybe I just think that the rest of the field is a little bit closer this year than they have been in past years. It seems like there's usually a third person that can push Ronaldo and Messi a little bit. Last year it was Neuer, who I thought he should have won. I mean, he was incredible last year. Then obviously I talked about the clean sheet versus scoring goals difference, and he won the World Cup and was a revolutionary goalkeeper, somebody who deserves the recognition. And in the past, it's been Xavi who has really given a good push to those two as the primary playmaker at Barcelona. But maybe they're just not as far out in front as they have been in the past. Some other people had great seasons.
That's definitely true. That's definitely true, and I don't really have an answer for that, but
they are getting older.
You could definitely make a case for other players being not as far back on their heels as in the past. Granted, they still are the two amazing goal scorers, and if there's ever a year that they're not 1 and 2 in La Liga, it would be I don't know if it would be a surprise, but it will be noteworthy. I don't remember the last time that happened, probably a few years ago. Actually, it's probably going to happen this year. Who am I kidding? But that's more of an injury issue with Messi than anything.
It'd be more interesting to do a list without them included.
Actually, yeah.
They should get recognized in their own award, a little race. But they are. Yeah. Ronaldo's on the other side of 30, and Messi's almost there. So this is gonna happen eventually.
It's gonna happen eventually, yeah.
All these other guys that we talked about are mostly in their early 20s, so
can't slow down time. Yeah.
Yeah, Father Time's undefeated.
Undefeated.
All right. Well, anything else you want to say?
I think that's about it.
Yeah, I think so too. Nice little short podcast here to end the week. We'll be doing one next week. It'll be my favorite one. All the EPL teams have 10 games under their belt as of next week, so they all create a FIFA formation with their records. So we'll try and get Mark Stinson on that to talk about the formations with the two of us. But until then, thanks for listening. And Ethan, go, it's Friday night, isn't it?
It is. I actually have plans. I need to head out in a few minutes.
Right.
It's going to get some tapas, very Spanish.
You going to Pasha?
No, I'm not in Madrid.
You're not going to Madrid to go to Pasha?
I'm going to Madrid tomorrow, actually, but I don't think I'll be going to Pasha.
I'm disappointed. What's the 5-story club in Madrid?
Capital. I think it's 7.
Okay, so you're going to go to Capital then.
Sure. We'll see. I don't know. I don't really know what I'm doing this weekend.
You're going clubbing.
Perhaps.
All right.
Perhaps. Is the podcast still going, or are you turn it off?
Oh, it's still going. I'll turn it off.
Oh.
Peace. Blow me.